I remember when Death Row first came in for their sound check, and just watching how menacing Suge was, to the point where like you see Dre sitting on a seat or something, and he's like almost cowering. But Dre in his rightful self is almost as big as Suge, but the presence that Suge had, it was larger than life, if you would.
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
Hey everyone, I am Jake Payne, editor-in-chief of Ambrosia for Heads, and we have a very special guest with us today. Joining Reggie Williams, our founder and CEO, we have T. Eric, a very accomplished hip-hop photographer. Not only has he, documented hip-hop culture, but also skating. Some of your absolute favorite photographs that you've seen, that you've known, that have defined the culture of Tupac, of Biggie, of the Roots, of Jeru the Damager, of Big L, on and on and on. T. Eric has been the one who has put our heroes in focus. So we are happy to have you join us today.
I'm honored. Thank you. Such a warm introduction. I'm like, wow, I did all that? Me? This little kid from the suburbs of Jersey? How's that possible?
Well, we're going to find out.
In New York City or in LA, not in the suburbs of Jersey.
No, that's dope. So what part of Jersey are you from?
I grew up in Somerset, New Jersey. So I'm right next to New Brunswick, where Rutgers University is. So it's right in the hub of it all. I'm 1 hour from New York City, an hour and 20 minutes from Philadelphia. So it's everything's right here, perfect. And where I'm at, it's suburban area. Even though New Brunswick, you have nightlife, you have the colleges and everything else. So you have the best of both worlds where I'm at.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've logged a lot of hours on the Amtrak and New Jersey Transit, Northeast Corridor.
Since 1992 to now. Many. It's just like second habit, I don't mind it. I mean, I'm grateful for it because it's like I can get in the city, handle stuff, network, do everything, whether it's skate, hip hop, or whatever, just any kind of business, like even doing event production work. You're able to get in the city, handle your stuff, and just come back home. You don't have to be up in the grid of it.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear you say that. I mean, for me, I've always worked in either New York or LA, but I've never lived there. I'm in Philly, so I'm sure there were plenty of times we've been on the same train, both like trying to catch a few Z's on a late night home.
Exactly. Making sure you stay awake on that last train so you don't get to that last stop and you're like, damn, another $80 cab all the way back.
Exactly.
I've been really excited to do this. I've been working on this platform for about 10 years now. Jake has been in the space for 20 years, and so I think we've seen just about every image imaginable, when it comes to hip hop, but oftentimes you don't know who is responsible for taking it. And so as I dove into your catalog, I started to see so many iconic moments. It just blew my mind, just to see. And one of the ones that I found was most fascinating was you were there at the infamous Source Awards, where the Bad Boy Death Row feud kind of became public. And you literally got a shot of Snoop Dogg saying, the East Coast ain't got no love for Death Row. I mean, you got the shot. That was crazy. So what did it feel like in the room when he said that?
Well, it was, there was something in the air, like you could sense like something was off, like there was tension that was not verbally said, and just the like you can understand why Snoop was so pissed off, because they're doing a good job, whatever, they're representing themselves, but also honoring New York. But at the same time, no one gave them any kind of like congratulations, sort of like just go back to LA kind of shit. It was rightfully so. I would have been pissed off too, but capturing that anger, and then that started in bubbling, and then you had the Suge thing later, and I was just like, it's time to get to turning back to Jersey. I'm going back to the suburbs. Peace. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to stick around. And I wasn't on assignment there either. I was supposed to have gotten a pass to be in there. No one got me the pass, but I knew, because they didn't give me a pass, where my windows of opportunity were in terms of getting to Madison Square Garden. And I got there at the right time, and I just sat around for a while, and then I remember when Death Row first came in for their sound check, and just watching how menacing Suge was, to the point where like you see Dre sitting on a seat or something, and he's like almost cowering. But Dre in his rightful self is almost as big as Suge, but the presence that Suge had, it was larger than life, if you would, and then watching just how everyone moved underneath Suge was interesting to watch. And then at the end of the show where he was like, if you don't want your, CEO or executive producer all up in your video, and I'm like watching, I'm like looking back at Puffy, and I'm like, does he really? Because you've never seen a moment like this, but you're watching it unfold. So I'm like, snap, what? Snap. Oh, what? Snap. Oh, all right, it's time to go now. Because you already know what's Puffy. I remember Puffy came out and was very cordial after, but I was like, nah, it's time to go. It was a moment to be an experience, yes.
It's crazy you say that about Suge because, I've been next to Kevin Durant, I've been in the same room and next to Shaq. And still to this day, I say that Suge Knight is the biggest person I've ever seen in my life because
I don't know what it is.
His presence is gigantic. But so you said you knew it was time to go, which means that you thought that it was going to evolve beyond words. What was it that made you think that?
I'm not saying that because thankfully I've never been in the presence of that type of moment.
Yeah.
I just knew for me, I'm good. I got enough shots. I'm gone. I just don't need to. What else do I need to see? Not that I thought a fight or anything. I just know when it's time to leave. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, it's gone. Because I wasn't on assignment. No one was paying me to be there.
Yeah.
I had to sneak in essentially.
Yeah.
On your Instagram, you posted a photo of you, Dre, Suge, and I think it's Big Jake, who's no longer with us, all in a circle. And you're a few feet to the side. And I have to, based on what you just said, I have to imagine that was before the show started. That was during sound check.
Oh, okay. Yes, it was when they literally the whole death row camp got to Madison Square Garden, and they're just all milling around. Like really, they just rolled in, and their sound check probably started like an hour and some change after they got there. But they were just sort of just like it was Dre and Suge and whomever in this area, Daz and Corrupt in one area together, and then I remember where the seats were behind me. Snoop was back, just hollering at girls or like they were just, but no one, like it was, what's his name? The guy who, and Fridays got knocked out by Debo, whatever his real name is, DJ Pooh.
Yeah.
Like he was in the back there. So it was just like, you're looking around and just like, I just thought it was interesting watching all this crazy shit happen. It was fun.
But the mood, I mean, and it just because that's a butterfly effect night for hip hop history, the mood and soundcheck, you could have never foreseen what ended up transpiring.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I mean, yeah, you couldn't because no one was a celebrity yet. Like everyone had hits. But to me, like that night, let's say LL Cool J was there. That would have been a celebrity or I don't know, like, or some famous actor, like that would have been celebrity status. Everyone else was still sort of bubbling up and you watched their careers evolve over 2 or 3 years. So there was no shell shock of celebrityism, so everyone was sort of just, okay, we're still growing, but nothing has happened yet.
Yeah. So you were there for that moment where it fractured, but you also captured a moment that you didn't realize it showed the togetherness that preceded that event. And you tell a phenomenal story about this photo that you had of Tupac, and you discovered someone in the background that was unexpected. Can you tell that story?
Yes. It was interesting. It was the night, and we're talking about is in 1993 when I was in New York to photograph and write an article on Onyx because they had the song Slam and it was big, and I was getting it into Thrasher magazine. So that night they were performing with Public Enemy, I believe it was Ice-T and someone else. They were probably the first opening act or something. So we got down a little after sound check, went on the stage. It was right before show, it wasn't even sound check. We went downstairs on the stage, shooting them different looks or whatever. It wasn't all of the typical yo-yo. They just, flow, got the shot, because it was all on film. And then I was like, and I knew we were good at that point. So I told them, like, let them said to them, we're good. Like, just I can go back to the dressing room. I'll be up in a few minutes or whatever because I was gonna pack my stuff. It was a good, beautiful energy. I was like, cool. I was happy. And then literally someone, off the side, it's like, yo, come take our picture. I'm like, okay, cool. Just give me a second. And I just got my stuff together, went over to dudes. I'm looking at them, and I just lined them up. And then I'm looking, and then they got ready, and that's when Pop threw up the finger, and I was like, thank you. And I went back to the dressing room. That's all it was. You know what I mean? So it was on slide film. And for years, like I knew after a while it was Tupac, but there was this giant middle finger. So in magazines back then, you can't run profanity like with sign language. So it wasn't really something I was like, oh, I have a picture of Tupac, there has to be a magazine interested. There was no interest for years. So I just kept putting it to the side, not thinking about it. But it wasn't until around 2012 when I was organizing all my slides to figure out what I'm going to do with it, because they were just organized. They were just in bins and boxes and bins and boxes. So I had to do my due diligence of organizing everything in sleeves and finally scanning it. But in 2012 into 2012, yes, I literally, as I was writing stuff down, like, and I remember looking at the Tupac slide, and I looked at it, and I'm like, and I looked at it again, and I had to get a light box because I'm like, it just didn't make sense what I thought I was looking at. But first part was they all had a "I'm a bad boy" shirt. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Why is Pac wearing "I'm a bad boy" shirt? Because it's not something I thought about in 1993, but in 2012, that makes no sense. So when I really, really stare into it, and I put it on the light box, look in the loop, that's when I start like just giggling about it, because it's like there's Biggie Smalls with his, there's Tupac, there's Little C's, D-Rock, Stretch, one of the guys from Junior Mafia, all wearing "I'm a bad boy" shirt in support of, Biggie singles, like, where it's like, "I'm a bad boy." I don't know if it was from Supercat thing, but that was his catchphrase. But I'm like, that like shows they were friends. And then I think like 2 years ago, I ran into Little Caesar in New York, and I introduced myself, and I happened to have the picture of him, Biggie, and Pac together. And he starts talking about that night. He's like, yo, 16. He's like, I had no business in there. He's like, I didn't even know this picture existed until a few years ago. That's why he was happy about the internet. And just tells the story about, this is the only moment that shows all of us were friends together. And you can go on my Instagram TV where he talks about it. It's not the best quality, but the point is, it tells a story, and he's happy to tell everyone, yeah, we were friends. Like, bullshit happened later, but at the start, we were supporting each other. You know what I mean? And that's what it was about for me.
That's amazing. Now, have there been other times where you found, retroactively, did you capture the significant moment that you didn't realize until later?
I thought, without say, I still have let's put it this way. I have a lot of negatives and slides still to go back through. When I first started the scanning process of what I've been showing and stuff I have in the background, that started in 2012, when every few months I'd scan a batch, and it was just the stuff I'm like, oh, this is cool, this is cool, this just very fast getting through it to try and develop just a catalog to share. But I've also gone back and like taken second and third looks. I'm like, oh, I forgot about this. Or there'll be moments of people together. Nothing I haven't. Well, I don't know what else is yet to discover. But there's a lot that I do have, and I even had, and I talked about this last week with someone. Like one moment that I know that I have, for example, is a moment of Beyonce in 1997 when she was at the Men in Black album signing at one of like Virgin Records or something in Times Square, where Will Smith was the main person there signing CDs or whatever. But Destiny's Child, they were all, not in the back, but off to the side, because they were on the soundtrack and they had the same publicist. And she asked me, hey, can you take a picture of, the girls are on the soundtrack? Like, of course, because I had worked with the label so much in terms, not them hiring me, but them at least giving me opportunity to say, hey, this is opportunity, here's opportunity, you make it happen. I made money off of making things happen by finding opportunity. So at the record signing, I went over to, line the girls up. So I have some simple group shots, of the Destiny's Children's together. But then, when the publicist's like, oh, this is, and I didn't even remember her name at the time. This is so-and-so, she's, lead singer. And then I said, okay, cool. So, I put like, there was a grand piano or something that was behind her. So I just quick line up, and it's like, I got a couple beautiful shots of like early Beyonce, like almost Virgin-esque, like, so stuff like that I'm just like, because I did my initial scanning of just because I wanted to sort of catalog with what I had of 90s hip hop and then some of the skate stuff later, I wasn't thinking about a Beyonce. I wasn't thinking about this moment or that moment or certain other people that I have, but I still have to take the time to get all the stuff scanned. And I'm a one-man army in terms of my work and having to scan it, but I have a team of people that have helped me obviously develop the books and everything else that I'm working on. But yeah, there's I don't know what else is hidden in there, but it just takes time and money and energy to get it scanned and cataloged and go through it and properly index it like I've been doing so far. So it's just more and more stuff for me to share. Not that it's about me, but it's about, hey, there's content of your favorite so-and-so. Like I have some other Big L stuff. I have just like, I know I have, for example, I have a folder of images that I called the smaller East Coast rappers, so it's everything from like Das EFX, Black Sheep, Lord Finesse, just people who necessarily didn't go gold but they're hood hits, like Blase Blah, Smooth the Hustle, have some great stuff up. So there's all these different categories of of 90s entertainers that I have, but it's just like, at what moment do you let out, each one? Because of the way that I'm releasing it on Instagram, it takes time because I want to not only just release the quality images of the artists and as they're developing, but I also want to have the right essay so I can write against it so you can really learn a story about the time with them that I spent, or whatever that it is. But it takes time, and I don't mind taking the time, because that's how quality is shared. That's how like the books are shared, with families, or I'm able to tell stories now, or whether it's skate or hip hop or whatever, just my experience as a suburban kid exploring life, if you would. That's how I look at it.
You mentioned the books on Instagram, and I love, you mentioned essays. I really value the words that you place next to your photos, whether it's an anecdote or an account from you, or, I mean, even last night, like the last thought in my head before I fell asleep was that Harold Hunter quote about money, which is phenomenal. And it enhances the photograph in the same way that photography and art enhances the music or the word. Just speak to me a little bit about your philosophy of those two worlds coexisting.
Which two worlds? How do you mean?
The word, the written word, and the image, the photo.
I feel like I never really, well, it's important to allow the moment that's captured to speak for itself independently. So it's taken me time to develop my writing skills, and also linguistically removing myself to allow the story to tell itself. So it takes time, working with copywriters or editors, just people who help you to express what the moment is purely. So it's a wonderful thing to not only show a moment, but it's also in writing express like minor details, whether it's the smell in the air, whether it's a minor thing that you've learned about the person, that they only wear this outfit because they only have these many outfits, or just like little things, or just whether it's skate stuff, it might be something silly that we might have done, like skating, or just the more you can express in words or in written form, those things can be carried along with the picture. And it's interesting that coming up in my family, we all had family photo albums that we passed from generation to generation. And one commonality that I realized in all the photo albums, there's no captions, but everything that happened. Why is that? So I was the person in my family who was always taking pictures at family events. So I guess in some ways I was trained to capture a memory and tell a story in just one moment. But you have to be calm about it and wait for it to really reveal itself, because you only have 36 frames on a roll of film. And as coming up, I didn't have a lot of money. I mean, not that I didn't have a lot of, I had to be very thrifty because everything came out of my pocket and I had to earn everything. So one roll of film, 36 frames, I had to make that last, whether it's, capturing stuff with my family, or, going to an event, or even photographing weddings, because weddings in themselves paid for more hip hop photography to happen. Like that's the real, like hip hop didn't pay for hip hop. Wedding photography paid for hip hop straight up. So if you're a photographer, learn and understand wedding photography. It'll pay dividends. That's all.
What was the first hip hop job that paid you? What was your first hip hop check?
Oh, that's easy answer, I think. Wait. It had to have been something in Thrasher. I know what it was. My first publishing in Thrasher when doing photography and writing was Ice Cube's The Lynch Mob in 1992. That would have been my first hip hop check from Thrasher. That's my first article. Yeah, that I wrote and photographed. And I did it. I photographed the group. They performed here at the local university at Rutgers University. So I arranged it because they were there, to get a photo pass and sit down to get time with them. And I did it. It was like 10, 15 minutes from my house, but boom, got it done. You don't have to go to New York. Like if you have colleges around you, entertainment passes you all the time. Like if you're in any kind of metro area, like figure out what is the stream of entertainment. Like you don't always have to go to New York. You'll have better moments, more personal moments when you're not in a big city, because I remember, here's a great example of it. In St. Louis, are you familiar with the group Run the Jewels?
Yeah.
Okay, they're a little group, right? So their DJ, Trackstar, he's from St. Louis, and I know him from St. Louis because I used to manage tours that went through St. Louis. I used to have I used to manage a 10-piece band and a rapper, and every month we'd take them on an 8-city tour, and I would oversee that. So when we went to St. Louis every month, Trackstar at the time was doing these mixed CDs, and he used to come and say, do you mind if I interview whoever the artist was EPMD, Black Sheep, Buckshot, whoever it was each month. Every time we came to St. Louis, he was already taken care of. Like, I brought him in, him and his lady always had dinner waiting for him, drinks, whatever. He would do his video, do his mic interviews, and then he would create these mixtapes with people. And he kept doing it every month. And then, he ended up like doing a mixtape, not because of me, but with Killer Mike at the time, a while ago. But his grind of making these mixtapes, just because they came through his town, allowed him to get leverage of doing interviews with people. Now he has a show on Shade 45, and obviously, he's now DJing for Run the Jewels, but he also does a lot of his own things. But he just was very humble in his hometown. And like for me, I could have been a dickhead, not promoter, road manager, like, kid, get out of here. But like, nah, I know what that hunger is like. I'm gonna make sure you get taken care of every time. Don't even have to ask. Like you and your friend, whoever you need to come in, you guys need drinks, food, whatever. It's along with the band, you guys are good. But it's giving people that opportunity of encouragement. Like, I see the drive, I'm gonna help you get at it. You know what I mean? And that's why we're still friends to this day.
So you mentioned, taking photos of a lot of underground rappers who had not reached that kind of mainstream success.
Yes.
And you talked about Big L. So Big L, his loss was particularly painful because he seemed like he was just on the brink of superstardom. So did you know who he was at the time when you took photos of him, and did you see that star potential?
Here's the interesting thing about Big L, and I photographed him in, was it 1993 at Columbia Records, because he had an album that came out sort of around the same time that Nas, like there was a bunch of acts that the Columbia Records released. So you had people like Nas, the Boss, the Fugees, Big L, the Brat came out a little bit later. But I remember the album when Big L's album came out on Columbia Records, it felt so rushed that it was just like a part of the machine. And I remember, I'm not even gonna lie, I remember having the cassette tape in my car, and me and my boy were driving to a skate park in PA, and we're driving. I'm like, next song, like, what, cassette, like, this is whack, next song. I got to the 5th song, and I was like, this shit is whack, and threw it out the window as I was driving. I kid you not. Like, that's how whack it was. But then when he came independently, Rawkus picked him up, he sounded like a completely different person. I'm like, yo, who the fuck is this? I'm like, that's not the same dude as Columbia Records, like, that I threw the tape out the window, But and at that time, I didn't photograph him as he was doing like Ebonics or whatever, but I did photograph him on the set of, there's a video set of something, but he was just in the background. I got a couple of really great shots of him that I'll probably release soon. But I still didn't, he still wasn't that breakout star yet, but lyrically, like when Ebonics and everything that he was coming up with, and then he was gone. I was like, fuck, you know what I mean? So you just never know. Like, some people you could see the star glow. Some people not that I don't do or don't, not that I know who's going to be a star, but it's just paying attention to people in the moment that it is and capturing it. Because again, when I thought his album was whack, before I heard the sound, I just was told, this is Big L, and this is so-and-so, can you take a picture of him? I'm like, sure, no problem. So that's where you get the Big L black and white picture of him just doing that. I never heard his sound. I just had to look at him and see what I saw and just capture it. You know what I mean? And him and his crew just capturing it. It wasn't about the music, because if I would have heard the music first and then captured it, it might have been a different picture. You know what I mean? Just being honest. But it's better not to know, sometimes the music or even for me, like doing interviews where I'll say, get sent like, hey, check out, these people did this podcast, or they did this, or here's some background video. I don't know. I don't want to nothing. Like, let's just go forward and let's absorb and be like, I'm not going to say, oh, but you guys talk. Nah, let's just start forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but listening to you, it's really clear that you have a passion and a deep knowledge for the music too. So did that come before? Like, is the music what got you into this, or did you just happen to start photographing hip hop stars and that's what drew you into the music?
Just the excitement of being around, the excitement of being around the music industry to a degree is what got me into it. I wasn't the biggest hip hop or music head, if you would. I obviously like the culture of it, because to me it reminded me of, your friends that are trying to either rap or be in a punk rock band. It's just the excitement of it, but also having an outlet and saying, okay, if I can get this picture of this band and do a write-up, I can get into a publication, and it'll allow me to network up and in. In terms of the music, I didn't have a great musical background. My parents didn't play music around the house. Like we listened to the radio if we're in the car, but they weren't big music heads. And I remember a sad or interesting example of this, not having great musical knowledge. In 1993, when I photographed Guru and Roy Ayers and everyone doing Jazzmatazz in Atlantic City, only person I knew there was Guru, just because he was in Gangstar. I didn't know the jazz history of Donald Byrd. I didn't know the history of Roy Ayers. I just looked at that. I remember, for perfect example is I remember looking at Donald Byrd and like really looking at his face and noticing his nose, and he had a similar shaped face here and here to my great grandmother, my father's mother. So that's what I keyed in on in terms of trying to lay and capture something, because that's what he reminded me of. Roy Ayers, again, I didn't know Everyone Loves Sunshine. I didn't know that until like literally 1995, 2 years later. And I was like, oh, that's dude. But it was something about his style and his essence that I was able to capture what I captured. And that's what it was. But I didn't know who all these amazing people were in front of me,
I love that account you have of walking Nas through Times Square and getting him in front of the watches, because, and I hope I'm paraphrasing this properly, it matched his aura. And just like you're saying, you were kind of fresh to the party when it came to Nas with that.
Right. I didn't know who he was, but so what we did was, we left Columbia Records, which was on 55th and Madison, and I knew the Rolex store was a couple blocks down. And there was this giant like Rolex tower with a Rolex face, and there was something in my mind. I wanted to get an angle of Nas and the Rolex thing, and it wasn't there. So we got a couple shots. I mean, I was like, eh. And I remember we went around the corner. I think it was on 53rd Street. We walked down, and there was this open park, and in the park there was this beautiful graffiti piece. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, oh, that looks fucking dope. So we sort of just without talking went over by the graffiti piece, and I set up a couple lights, and I looked around, and I just captured him just being him. And there was never a direction of, hey, look here. Like Nas is his own era, like own universe. Like you just want to observe Nas as I did. And then, it's got some stuff in color, some stuff in black and white, stuff with his hat on, his hat off, different angles, because like the way his structure was, it reminded me of almost photographing like skateboarding if you had a really good wide angle lens, because of the way that he was shaped. And so I didn't have a perfect wide angle lens, but I knew by just positioning myself, I can get a wider angle on him on certain shots. And I just float around as if he was like a skater or something, and that's why I got interesting angles of him. And then when we were leaving the park, there was a placard there that said the big graffiti piece that we're looking at was a piece of the Berlin Wall that had actually been brought over to the United States to put on display. Mm-hmm. So that in itself was bizarre. The Berlin Wall in New York City with Nas in front of it,
Go ahead, Reggie.
Well, I was saying, talking about like how you captured Nas and choosing not to kind of pose him. I think about your picture with Mos Def and Talib Kweli, Mos being Yassine Bey now. And they're clearly posed, but their gaze is away from the camera. Like, how do you decide when you want them to lock into the camera versus look elsewhere?
Well, that split moment that I have them there, they actually had just flown over from Norway the night before just to do Rocksteady Reunion. And they were getting out of their car, and they were coming around their car, getting ready to go on stage. And I had motioned to Mos Def, like to just acknowledging he was there, that I want to take a picture. And he was like, cool. Like, it was all hand gestures. So when they came around right before they got on stage, they literally just stopped. Like, it was like, boom. And I got one shot with my medium format camera. I just looked at them, was like, boom. And that was it. Then they had to go on stage. Like, literally, they just came together and was like, boom. Like, they brought themselves together. It wasn't like, I was like, Mos Def. It's very rare that I pose someone. Like, if I see them in a moment, I might ask them to turn their chin or just the way so light will hit their face the right way. But normally, like, I can try and pose someone, but it takes a little while for them to relax. Once they relax and they just they're allowed to be them. Like, you can give them cues like move, position, whatever to do. But beyond that, I'd rather just watch and learn you as the subject, if you would.
True of skating and hip hop, but our cities are changing. They look different. The Rolex iconography, and that couldn't happen that moment with Nas today. Has that been a challenge for you with, your work today of finding those raw elements that match your subjects?
No, I don't actively photograph anymore as a profession. Right now I'm doing a lot of licensing, but I still capture moments every day. Like it just you see moments that you want to capture. Even think it was last Friday. I was at the store Lambs in New York City, and there was a gentleman doing these carpets like with yarn and this machinery, and it was amazing to watch. And just to watch a gentleman like doing this beautiful carpet, like crochet style with bags of yarn, and I was giggling because I also crochet and I make hats. So it's like you get in the zone. It's own. I don't know if any of you guys fish or anything.
It's been a while.
Okay, so you know how it is. Like you'll go to a store, even though you have enough lures, but there's a couple more just in different colorway, or just this little bit. So you collect yarn, like with yarn, like fishing equipment. You just collect it because you're going to use it. So the way that he was just poised in the store, like making this beautiful carpet with this machinery, like capturing that moment of him being so intense, the supplies around him, and even to the point where I photographed his shoes with clippings of like yarn over his like these specially painted Reeboks or whatever. But you can always capture a moment. You don't have to influence a moment. You just have to watch and observe, and you just capture it. So it's I don't think there's any challenge. I think it's just adaptability. Because every day it's always something different and new.
So you talked a lot about watching, observing your subjects. How do you see people differently with your naked eye versus through your lens?
I think when I start with just my eye by itself, I'm more observing the person in their environment. And I think once I bring my camera up to select when that moment is right, I think I'm more zeroing in on framing more than anything else, because I've seen and observed, like, okay, there's this section that I want to capture. If I was shooting my photograph myself, I'm like, okay, this is where I want to capture it to here. So I'm just paying attention to the space, but then I'm focusing in on like, okay, where's the light at? Okay, that's a better light on my face, or like certain little minutiae, and then it's just like you just capture it. So it's definitely just paying attention to it, observing it. So I'm not just wasting. I can do like 1,000 shots, like, but or I can just be patient. It's like, okay, cool, and just it's right because it feels right. It's not pressured or forced. And even just in a regular iPhone.
Yeah, and you took a lot of photos of Tupac. What do you recall about him when the cameras weren't pointed at him?
Well, he is a very wise person, very smart person. My observation is a few ways of observing him. One, because it was a press day, because the Vox Music Video Channel, this is in 1994, I'm recalling, you had the real, TV cameras and like the paparazzi and everyone just rushing him like to do this, do that. And it's just like, he knows how to play for the camera, for the spotlight. But then when the cameras are down and the spotlight's done, when they're changing film, like it's him and his boys, it's just him and his boys, and he's focused and he knows what he's doing. And then when the cameras are back up, he's making sure he's by his boys doing this, doing that, making sure the camera, like he's tight enough in so his boy's going to get on camera. Like he knows, because he's an actor, he knows how to work the camera. And then, again, like, whether it's time to give the thug life, to give the middle finger, to give the, menacing black man look that you expect of me. And then it's like, once it's over, he's just like, and that's when we laugh. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, well, that's when he's going to go with his boys. That's when they have their moments. The press leaves them alone, everyone else. And those are the moments like where it's just like, you take the mask off and you're just like, this is some bullshit again. But you know what? 2 million is going to hit my account in a minute. So it's like, you have to play it. You have to understand the characterization of a lot of our better icons and how they play the role. I mean, because again, Tupac was an actor. He studied acting and he knew how to develop characters. Old Dirty Bastard had a bunch of characters. Trying to think who else was a great character. Mos Def, he's an amazing actor, in his own right, outside of, being a lyricist. I remember the first time that I knew he was an actor was, this was in 1995. And I didn't even know his real name. Everyone just called him D at the time. So I first met him when De La Soul was doing Stakes is High album. So every night I would leave the source, go up to Platinum Island recording studio where they were recording, not so much to hang out with De La, but my friend actually managed the studio. So I'd go up there, we'd read books, puffy, I'd say hi to De La, bullshit, D's hanging out. So this was going on for a couple of weeks. And I remember one morning I was leaving Jersey for New York and the TV was on in the background and I heard Bill Cosby's voice and then I heard D's voice and I'm like, wait, nah. And then I heard Bill Cosby's voice and I heard D's voice and I looked, I'm like, yo, that's D from the music studio. So I started laughing and the show was Cosby Mystery Show, which I didn't even know existed. I remember I went to the city that morning early afternoon. I was skating down from the train from Port Authority, which was on 42nd. And I'm skating all the way down Broadway, and I get to 25th and Broadway, and there's a park on my left-hand side, and literally Mos Def is sitting on a park bench reading a book with his dry cleaning next to him. And I stop on my boy. I was like, "Yo, D." He's like, "Yo, what's going on?" I was like, "Yo, tell me why I just saw you on TV." He's like, "What?" I was like, "Yo, I'm with Bill Cosby." He's like, "Ah," starts laughing. He's like, "Oh, that's some old acting stuff I used to do." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, whatever." And I was like, "I'll see you this evening." And I just skated off. But who knew? But again, I didn't know he was Mos Def, or he was just D, one of De La's boys at the time. So it's just, he's a seasoned person. He's been a seasoned person.
Yeah, I saw in one of your videos you talked about Tupac with some kids and how his demeanor changed with that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. When this was in Harlem, and again, the news cameras were taunting him to do this and do that, so they can just get all the footage that they need. And at this point, there was too many kids around him, and he was just like, he just not that he was rude to the media, but he just focused on the kids that were in front of him and just signing autographs and asking questions, and the parents were coming over. He was very one-on-one engaging in every moment. Like, yeah, he had a cigarette in his mouth. He wasn't smoking it, and a 40 under his arm, but he was more interested in talking to you. Like, how's school going? How is this? Because that was a neighborhood where he was in elementary school, so he knows the environment, but he was truly engaging, with his community. It wasn't about, it wasn't about celebrityism, about the music. He was happy to be one-on-one with his home community environment of where he lived in New York, and now that to him was more special than anything. And it was beautiful to watch, because it's like you see in his eyes the one-on-one connection with the kids or the people around him. It wasn't like, hey, let's make a paparazzi moment. No, like, he didn't care about the cameras around him. And he showed you, because the cameras are still around him shooting him. He's focused on them. And that was so more important to him.
You mentioned De La Soul and Q-Tip, and you have a series, but you have a shot of Posthumous at the turntable pulling samples or something in the studio. You shot a lot of your subjects in the studio. I'm going to ask you a question that folks ask me on the journalism side. Right. Having been in the studio, did you ever hear something music-wise that the public didn't get to hear that you wish we did, or that blew you away?
Yes. I'm thinking of, and it's funny because it's a song by the Roots that I heard back in 1994, early 1994. Was it? It was 1994. It would probably be like April.
Static, Silent Treatment.
No, it was a sound. It never came out. It was because Amir Questlove had given me 2 demo tapes. And there was a song on it. It was called The Ultimate Jewel. And when I heard it, like, it just blew, like, the whole Do You Want More, like, all the remixes, they kept giving you so much quality music of what they've been creating. So they developed so many beautiful sounds. But there's this one song, I think it's The Ultimate Jewel, that I can't find it anywhere. And I lost the cassette tape, and I still ask Quest when I see him. He's like, "Oh, it's going to come out on this. It'll come out." So I'm like patiently waiting, because sonically it was so fucking amazing. Like, that whole Do You Want More album sonically was just some next level. Like, if they can make more albums that sound like that, it reminds me of like classic rock, like when you have a really great music system and you can hear all the layers of sound and like attention to detail. Like, that's what the Roots, put out on that Do You Want More album. And they have a new release coming out, I hope sometime soon or by September. But I heard bits of it, and I was just like, it makes me happy. It makes me happy. A lot of their old stuff and a lot of new stuff that I'm hearing, even from a lot of New Jersey rappers. Like, it just makes me happy again.
Yeah, they did a bit of an okey doke a couple weeks ago, where they released a cut from the upcoming deluxe version of Do You Want More? And yes, Black Thought, I'm Every MC, and he mimicked Cool G Rap, Ice Cube, and like all these. And then it was up for like 12 hours, then they snatched it away. It was crazy. Yeah. You talk, it sounds like, and let me know if this is true, that you do become friends with some of your subjects that you photograph from time to time.
Absolutely. And it's a friendship that's a respectful space, meaning that there's a trust that they allow you in their space. You don't abuse that trust, meaning like you're not blowing up their phone. You don't ask favors. You have to respect their celebrityism to be around them. Your friends are your friends at home. This is business. We're business associates, and we trust each other that you're gonna, capture the best of me. Or if you're just whatever it is, they feel safe in your space, whether there's a camera up or not, and it's been years of the same thing over and over and over again. And it's a trust factor. It's not that I'm Tierk Monroe, photographer of XYZ. No, I'm Tierk Monroe, just a butterfly, float around. You know what I mean? And I'm a trusted person that I'm okay to be around, because he's not going to sell your soul or not going to make you look bad, or, because there's moments where I'm just like, I'm not going to show this of this person this way, or I'm not going to, because, a bar part might be hanging out, or no, like you have to respect the artist as an artist, and that means if you're their stylist and you're dressing them, you're not going to show them half-ass naked, like you're not going to disrespect the person. So it's a real respect factor, just of your subject or the person or of yourself, to want to allow them to have a brighter light, not like, oh, here's the scam picture of somebody doing such and such. No, you don't want to taint their image. Nah, just keep it bright. If they want this on the side for them, then give it to them, but you give it to them on the side and let them destroy it or do whatever they want with it. That's how I look at it.
You mentioned that you don't shoot anymore, hip hop. Was there a moment, and it's like asking Rakim why he doesn't put albums out, or asking Kane, but was there a moment for you that you just decided, you know what, I've done everything I want to do. I'm going to take what I have and focus on curating it. Like, just tell me more about that decision with your career.
Well, what it was for me, was in 1990, somewhere around 1996, I knew I was done with hip hop photography. Because in my gut, I wanted to get back into amateur skateboarding events is what it really came down to. And it's like I was planning it out, like, because I ended up starting an amateur skateboard league that went from 1998 to 2005 across the East Coast. And then we had two different amateur series, one for older guys that was sponsored, and then one for younger kids and families, like a family-friendly environment. But that's where my gut was at in like 1996, where I'm just like, I'm bored with this. Like, not that I've done everything, but my heart's not here anymore. And at the time I was working at the Source and staff as photo editor. And I just didn't like the politics anymore. I didn't like the bullshit. And it's like, when you chime in with like humanity, they're pushing back like, no, the streets want to do. I'm like, oh, word. I'm good. I don't, you know what I mean? I came in here because it was an opportunity, well-needed a photo editor. I understood what needs to happen on a monthly, basis. And I also know enough photographers who haven't had a chance to be published that they should be published. And that's why I'm here. And I literally had an open door policy. Like, if you're more than halfway decent, you're competent, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. It's not always the cover. It might be, a small little quarter section. It might be a half page. It might be, it's the fact that you're getting your foot in the door. You know what I mean? Because that's what it takes. Just get your foot in the door and keep going, and that's how I had it until, it kind of went haywire. And I was just like, what was, and I'm grateful that I left when I left, because it allowed me to open the door, for amateur skateboarding events, and like it created a lot of community over so many years. And for me, I also, in the first 2-3 years, you can look at old skate flyers that I did, but I had record labels sponsoring the skateboarding events. I had Bobby Digital banners at events. I had Jizza posters at events, because I knew where the record label money was in terms of promotional dollars. So it's like I'd plaster a skate park with posters, stickers, giving promotional CDs away, in addition to giving skateboard product away, and then when Activision came out with the Wu-Tang game and Tony Hawk Pro Skater that same year, they brought it to me to help do grassroots promotion. So I'm like, yeah, skateboarding and hip hop video games. Yeah, I already have a platform to create, video sampling booths or whatever. And then I took that and allowed us to go to BMX, snowboarding, whatever kind of events, set up the same booth. And then at the same time, do cross promotions for the record labels by having their cassette tapes and stickers at the snowboard, surfing, whatever events, so it's just that same like hip hop mentality, you just cross promote it different ways.
You talk about Wu.
Oh, go ahead.
You talk about Wu, and you've got an amazing photo of Ghostface and Raekwon.
Yes.
They've had a long-standing relationship, and I didn't realize until I watched the Hulu show Wu-Tang, I think it's the American Saga, that they did not start off that way. They started off as pretty bitter rivals. So, what did you recall about their chemistry in person?
It was beautiful. I mean, I didn't. People have told me about the Wu-Tang Saga, and again, I chose not to watch it for no other reason than I just didn't want to see it. My moments with any Wu-Tang member that I've been or had the honor of being around has been genuine moments. But Raekwon and Ghostface, they have beautiful energy together because their sound, they're opposites for a reason, you know, but when you take those opposites and you find a way of blending them together, that's why they make such beautiful music. And when I understand about the documentary, they weren't the best of friends, from what I understand, you know, and understanding that, like, having to be able to come together on opposites and work together, like, there's such beautiful synergy that you create. You know, it's like Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, or, you know, you name it. Like, that's the beauty and fucking amazing lyricism that they pull out of each other based on opposites, you know, and that's how they've grown their career. And when I'm around them, you know, it's the typical thing where they're like, okay, get our picture done. Like, okay, you want this, you want this, you want this, you want this. Okay, we're done. Like you got the hip hop moment. Now you're gonna just go to the next thing. And it's like, yeah, you got that. But then when it wasn't about the, like just, I didn't know Raekwon and Ghostface. I knew of them, but I didn't know them. So it's a matter of observation of, like, you know, once they're done the typical chaos, like, what do you blend into? Like, what do you fall back to? And it's like when they fell back into, that's when I got the moment of them against the wall, like leaning like this. Like, that's when I got, you know, Ghostface really looking in and like relaxing, and you're like, wow, like you could see in and through him in such a beautiful way. Like, you can hear his words through his face, you know, like, so I'm grateful that I got those moments that I got of them, like, by being patient enough to just chill and just wait, you know, and just allow them into me, allowing me into their space, if you would.
You mentioned that position at the source during, you know, the true glory years of the publication. Was there a decision you made, whether it related to your photography or, like you said, putting on others, empowering others, that you're especially proud of, or you think was, you know, proved to be deeply impactful with time?
This was interesting. The source for me, it was interesting because the source allowed me on early years, like starting in like late 1993, to always just stop by their office. Not that I was on staff, but, you know, I was friendly with enough people and I didn't have an office in New York, and I'm, again, an hour and change away from the city. So I was able to drop my bags there for half the day and go do this, go do that, and then come back and grab my bags, do this. They just let me have stuff there. So I had mad respect for them in that sense. So when I got on staff and I started seeing the evolution, the source evolved a few different forms. But definitely the 96 into 97 era of when they really took that gloss look up. I remember, I think the last issue I worked on was probably the Suge Knight issue, and I think I have it here. And even at that time, like, this was like the last issue I worked on, and I remember being so done. And I remember we had switched offices, like we got a brand new building and they got all this new money, and I was just like, it just didn't feel the same. And I was glad that I'm like, it's about skateboarding, but it's like, I'm grateful, you know, that the source grew and evolved and gave a lot of people a lot of opportunities in terms of writing and photography and just developing their craft in so many ways. But it's also interesting from an outside perspective when I left, watching the slow decline and who was involved, you know, and why they were involved, and just how it just not destroyed the industry, but shit just fell apart, you know. And it didn't have to fall apart, but it was based on egos, you know. But that's why I was glad I was away from it. And like, looking back at it now, you could see the decisions that were made that made things sort of fall apart, you know. And it's sad. It was over greed, and at that point, everyone was making so much money. Like, how much more money do you really need to make, you know? But that's on them for them.
Yeah. You know, you have one of the very few, you know, so scour the web, photos of Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo together. And in my opinion,
Yes.
It's maybe the most iconic one. What do you remember about their chemistry together?
I mean, it's that night in particular, their chemistry is just beautiful soul babies. Like if you can just take their genes and just make other babies, like yeah, Lauryn has great Marley kids, but come on, splice some, you know, D'Angelo Hill kids together. Spread the love to the world. But they were just beautiful energy, because this is 1996. You know, D'Angelo has a nice buzz, and, you know, Lauryn is, at this point, 1996, she was writing for Aretha Franklin, working with Clive Davis on Aretha Franklin's album. Yeah. She was also working with Common Sense at the time, right before he put out Retrospective of Life. So she was like in this new executive businesswoman role, in addition to working on, you know, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. So her essence and beauty, just like, it was beautiful that night, because you had Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo together. then you had Maxwell and Lauryn Hill together, and then you had pictures of Maxwell and D'Angelo together. I'm like, can the three of y'all just make an album where I can just cry all the time, just want to be in love? You know what I mean? Like, seriously. But it was, like, even Q-Tip was there that night. It was just beautiful energy. Andrew Martinez, I'm trying to think who else was there. But it was just a lot of beautiful energy that night. And it was Lauren was getting an award for something in Black excellence from some kind of African-American museum, and her mother was there, and her mother glows like she glows. So it was just like all this beautiful energy. Like, if you could just pollinate that over and over again, like, you'd have some beautiful fucking everything, you know?
Yeah.
So I was happy to capture that night with them.
So you mentioned Erykah. I had the pleasure of attending what I believe was her first ever showcase in New York. It was about 3 weeks before Baduism dropped. It was at the Soul Cafe.
Wow.
Malik Yoba, you remember that spot? Malik Yoba.
Yes.
And you have this photo, and I'm wondering if it was from that night of Erykah. She's looking regal, and it's 1997. Was that the night, or
No.
When did you take that photo?
I took the photo in 1997, but interestingly enough, that was captured here in New Jersey at the PNC Bank Art Center. That's actually her in concert.
Oh yeah, I was at that show too. Yep.
Yeah. So, but somehow I just lined it up, you know, from far away, you know, and I got these beautiful moments of her, you know, where she's just, Erykah's just Erykah. And here's another time where certain people are around you, but you don't take their picture. So 1996-ish, when the Roots would play Irving Plaza all the time, Erykah Badu was always at Irving Plaza, you know, during these Roots jams shows. But I remember a friend of mine who was always with her, we would always, you know, point out that her headdress was beautiful, her makeup, jewelry. She was always just this essence and glow. But I never stopped to take a picture. Like, we'd acknowledge her, but I never said, hey, can I take a picture of you? And I was like, fuck, you know, but that's one of those another moments where woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I'm grateful the moments that I did capture her, because she's just, yeah. The queens, I love them all.
I, especially the last year, and being a Philly guy myself, I really appreciate how you captured Malik B. And, you know, especially I think in his passing, people were clamoring to understand more of who he was as a poet, but behind. And I just really not a question, but I commend you, you know, in treating that group like a band, which it was at the time, and still is, you know.
I mean, Malik is like, I don't even know who to compare him to, because his lyrics are so unique. His style, his slang, his just, I'm trying to think of compare. Like, I could say Q-Tip, but Q-Tip doesn't do it right. I don't know. He's just so unique in his sound and just his dress, and just, it's all there, you know. And it's just, when it comes out, you're just like,
yeah,
you know. But it's just the beauty of essence. And you know, I've had pictures of I believe it's early 1994 or late 1993, I'm not positive, at the Supper Club in New York, where they used to play at Giant Step all the time. And it's just early stuff with Tariq and Malik, you know. You have Leonard Hubbard, you had Scott Storch playing, you know, the Rhodes. And it was like, that was the early Roots. And so for me, I was watching them like a fan, you know, and capturing them like a fan, you know, because they were so unique. And I was happy to see a band with such quality sound that wasn't typical boom bap hip hop, you know.
Reggie and I, you know, at the years at Ambrosia for Heads, we often, there were certain artists that you really can't seem to get without sunglasses. And
right.
when you get an artist with not wearing their sunglasses, it shows you everything you need. And I think Biggie is so emblematic of that. And you have some really, you know, we've talked about Tupac, but you've got some shots of Big that, you know, are really incredible. And I just want to, you know, did you ever know at the time that you would be showing a window into this person's soul, you know?
Not at all. Like, I never thought history forward in any of this, because there was no internet to remind us of how time moves so fast. So our only reference of time really were magazines. So I hadn't been involved enough to understand a 5-year gap or a 10-year gap. I was just 1992 to 1998. It was just like, by 1998, you know, we had, you know, do we have an email yet? Yeah, we had email addresses by 1998. You know, I did anyway, you know, but it's like that short time, I didn't think about what's this going to be like in 20 years from now? Because I was like 21 to 25 to 27 or whatever, you know, during that time period. So I didn't know what 37 was going to be like, you know, and I didn't think history forward, you know. It was just a matter of capturing it, just because you have the opportunity to really capture it, and hopefully it goes in a magazine or it gets licensed somewhere. And that was pretty much the scope of it. Like, you're hoping something would happen with it, and then 2 months later, the next person's hot, the next thing's going on, you just shelve it. That's the process, just shelving it, because no one asks you in the immediate, like, oh, do you have stuff from 2 years ago? No, you'll get played out. Like, oh, nobody wants to see so-and-so. That was 2 years ago shit. You know what I mean? It's just like, and that's part of the discouragement, because it's like, you're loading up on so much stuff, but then you're just like stacks and stacks of stuff that you'll every so often you'll get, called like, hey, can this be licensed or whatever? You work with a stock agency. And again, this is 1992, 1998. And stock agencies did okay for me in terms of creating a revenue stream globally that I didn't have access to. But beyond that, like, like, we don't think that much forward, and it's hard sometimes, but I'm grateful being in the future now, being able to look back with clarity. And part of that is being able to write about the moments. It helps you bring out more and more moments. The more you can write, the more description, and then you leave it for a day or so, and you're like, oh, you remember more and more about it, and then like you really get into it. So you're able to craft in words, sort of what you do in whether it's fine painting or a great photograph, we have depths of layer of substance that you can really bite into and share.
So one of the images of yours that I found really striking and intimate was a big pun. It's in black and white. And he's sitting with his son, like you capture him at home with his family. So what do you recall about Pun the man?
For me, Pun was very quiet, because my relationship was with Fat Joe, who I'd known for a while. And I was around Pun and cordial around Pun, but the relationship was like more Joe and I. So for me, Pun, he was more in the background. It's kind of like Cuban Links or some of the other guys in Terror Squad, even though Pun was coming out on his own. He was just a quiet guy to me. Like, I didn't know anything about him. Like, I didn't know anything about him other than he was a great lyricist, and that was it. And he was, Boys with Joe, and Joe was developing his career. So it was very distant, but at the same time, this time when I was at their house, what were they even doing? I think they might have been doing a segment for The Box with Angie Martinez. That's exactly what they were doing. So when we got to his house, it was in the South Bronx. We got out the car, went around to the front of his house, and Christopher, or Dragon Rios, he was literally like waiting for his father, like super antsy. Like, his father was home, and his father to take a phone call, so he has father to get the house phone, and he's sitting down, and like Christopher's like sitting there, just like waiting for his father to be done, like with his big Godfather hat, with this just like just waiting for him. And they both had, I think, the Yankees hats on. And then, as soon as Pun, like, there's a whole segment that I didn't air where it's like Pun's on the phone, and then you can see the heartbreak, or something's really disturbing about the call. And it's like, he's like looking down, and like, he did not break character, but he was just like, the call wasn't going well. But when I would never share that, I've shared it with his family, and then once he gets off the call, he like looks over to Christopher, and then he literally leans over, and he like gets the hat and like gives him a kiss on the cheek, like showing that love and affection, like, so that moment of them by themselves, like really in that moment together, and then the subsequent moment, I might have shared it once, like where he leans over and gives him a kiss. That's just a beautiful moment of people, let alone it happens to be hip hop, so it's like bringing the humanity, the humanity side of hip hop, or just the humanistic side of who we are. We're not, mad all day, or not drinking all day, or not, like, there's a side when you go home and you take care of your family, and like, you're part of your family's life, and that should be, I like being able to share that. There's a picture that I have of Posthumous and his daughter Ayana Monet from 1996, where they're outside of MTV Studios, and she has his lanyard, and she's literally just spinning it around. But and it's a moment where, because her father travels so much, that they're just there together, and it's just that 2 minutes of them together before he has to go, what made the world to her. She just spin her father's lanyard, just like, oh, I'm here with daddy. And I've published it once with Pos's permission. And I remember I termed it something just like love or something, but because it was such a genuine moment, So it's like I like sharing as much as I can to show more about us as people. We're not just one dimensional, that we only just do journalism, we only just write music. Like, no, we came from something, so let's celebrate what we came from, whether it's our family, or or our offsprings, or whatever. Just celebrating your community and being happy about it. It's not just about being mad all the time, or throwing money in the air and wasting money and doing all this silly. Anyway,
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, so First of all, that's amazing. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of that black and white, very quiet, intimate photo is your deeply colorful, big, huge, bombastic personality shot of Missy Elliot in her space.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when you first saw that get up? Because that was like unlike anything before or since.
It was beautiful. And I say that with such pride because I remember getting on the video set and I didn't know what I was walking into. It was a typical thing where, again, the publicists, like record labels don't want to pay you to do shit. They're like, hey, such and such is going on, da, 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 if you happen to be interested. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So, I happened to go to the music video set, a typical hype wave set where it's super bright all the time. And I remember walking around and I don't even think I saw Missy Elliott initially. I saw Keisha from the group Total because I actually went to high school with her. And it's, I used to see her all the time. And it's like typical me, bullshitting with Keisha from Total, just sitting around. And then I think it was something where like I sort of looked over and then I see like this giant anime character, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Missy Elliott and her get up and then seeing Little Kim in her get up. And I'm just like, what the? And I started laughing about it, and Keisha was laughing with me. And then I ended up, walking around the set and like looking around and then you see the bright, like, I'm like, what is going on here? Because, at the time, I didn't know the song, I didn't know the concept, but I just was watching something that you're just like, this is something that's right. Because Missy's the only one that can do it and corral her girls to do it along with her. And Hype Williams captured it the right way. And it was just one of those moments where it was like larger than life moments that made sense. Like it wasn't someone, like trying too hard, like because Missy just did, I Can't Stand the Rain, and think about all the different costumes. So she just creativity wise brought it to the next level that made sense. Like the Speed Racer anime that whatever that is considered in terms of art form. But she's just like she's so fucking creative. You gotta love her.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure there's two questions I want to ask you about your books, and one being, you're very active on Instagram and you do it with tremendous curation, but I feel like for as much as folks, steal and reshare and these images live on through the internet, there's a newfound need to hold tangible things.
Right.
And can you just speak of what you've realized in publishing, several volumes of your books?
What I've learned, wow, where do I even start? I'm glad that we because I work with a team of people, like a small team, that actually help to self-produce the books, but you learn everything about the business of publishing, from what does it take to get a book together, like finding self-produced options that are available to you, understanding like working with a printer and like mistakes and all these things that if you go to a book publisher you don't learn these things. They give you a little percentage, hold out your rights for a long time, and you don't learn the actual business of it. So now I'm willing, I always tell people like, yes, you can do it. I give them tips of do this, try this, like just take your slow, it takes a long time to develop a book because you have to make sure each image is scanned properly, touched up properly, that the writing is right, that you're working with the right copy editors to make sure the book is sound, if you would, that it can stand the test of time. And then visually making sure it has the right balance. So there's a lot that goes into it. But I like having the tangible assets where people can literally not only have it on the dining room table, but they can, it's PG-13 or PG, like they can read it, and people have told me where they've read it to their families or share it as gifts. And even making the gold book where we only made 100 of them, which is the Rare and Unseen Moments of 90s Hip Hop Collector's Edition Gold Book. And we only made 100 of them, but working with the printer at GM Printing in Massillon, Queens, who actually manufactured the book for us, he took his time, KY is the gentleman's name at GM Printing. He's a master craftsman and he's been doing it for years. And we would sit in meetings and he'd take out all these different materials and like just really show you what you can actually create in terms of a book, like showing you different types of binding, different types of silk or different types of paper. Like it was such an amazing education. Like I have to go to craft school, for the education that he gave us. So now I'm able to pass that education on to the next person if they want to develop a book, not only like these, but just bigger ways or more creative ways that are you were able to make a book that I didn't know walking into it. But thankfully, we were with the right person who wanted to teach us about publishing and making something new and different. Because to me, to have tangible things like books or photo prints, or even licensing for albums or something, people want to hold on to something, you know, to want something to collect, to share and share of. Like Instagram's great, and I love social media, but there's a time when I put my phone down, you know, and I want to actually be in the real world, you know. So it's also sharing in a way in space that's outside of the phone, you know. So another example of that is, you know, this Saturday coming up, I'm a part of, you know, a Vans footwear release called the NJ Brick Collection. And a part of the collection is a photograph that I shot of Redman in 1997, because Redman's from Newark, Brick City. So there's an image of Redman on a stack of pizzas that we're using for one of the images as a part of the collection. And then there's a second photograph of this world famous place in New York City called the Brooklyn Banks. And it's made with bricks that are made from Sayreville, New Jersey. So Sayreville, New Jersey was known for making bricks that can be found in buildings, you know, as far north as Maine, far south as Richmond, Virginia, and I don't know how far west, but all the bricks, you know, for the Brooklyn Banks and all these famous skate spots were made from Sayreville, New Jersey. So that's where we're making the NJ Brick Collection. But the second shirt that's available as a part of the collection is a photograph of the Brooklyn Banks that was taken in 1988. And you see a skater, you know, skating the banks or whatever, and there's people sitting on the wall behind the banks, and then behind the wall, there's a guy holding a camera with a blue hat. Hold up, that's me in 1988. I swear to, and what's interesting even more so, the day that that picture was taken of me standing at the Brooklyn Banks, getting ready to take a picture of a skater, that afternoon, I took a picture of the first woman to ever skate in the Eastern Skateboarding Association competition at the Brooklyn Banks. And that picture got published in Thrasher magazine. And that was my first picture ever published in a magazine when I was a junior in high school in 1988.
Damn.
On that same afternoon that I'm on that t-shirt. That's a part
hat.
of the Bricks collection that's coming out this weekend.
Man. So you mentioned finding the Tupac photo and you know there's other Big L images. I want to ask you a similar question to close.
Yes.
In compiling your books and in doing all that you've been doing, what have you learned about yourself, or what have you learned about yourself during those years that surprised you?
I know. Actually, I learned a lot. Well, I'll use these last few years when I'm really paying attention to it. But what I'm paying attention to was my level of detail from 1992 to 1998 that I didn't recognize at the time, meaning that how I focused in on like people's eyes, their face, their skin tone, like really capturing people's essence that I didn't realize, because for me, I was speeding so much through life because it's like, you got to do this, you got to do that. But I didn't stop to like really study my work. It was sort of like you just did it as you went along. But now looking back at it and seeing the consistency of what's there in terms of the color, the thematic ways of people expressing themselves over and over and over again, I didn't have a voice to say, I capture images this way in 1992. I didn't have that voice back then. I had no idea. I just knew I was consistent about doing something and meeting a deadline. That's all I knew back then. But looking back at it now, like I really learned that I was really, really focused in on my craft, even though I didn't have the terms to define what I was doing at the time, where it's now, you know, so many, almost 30 years later, or however many years later, like, or 20, whatever, looking back at it, like, and saying, wow, I was really confident in what I was doing at such a young age, you know, from 21 to 25 or 20, whatever the age was, but I was focused and disciplined enough where looking back at it now, we can see Tupac in 1994, we can see, you know, the gloss in his skin, you can see the, you know, the hair on his face, like you could see the glow and essence, or, you know, whether it's Biggie on stage in Harlem or you know, or whomever, you know, a picture of Lauryn Hill in a hallway, like directing and just waiting for the next moment to come into play. All these consistencies, you know, and it's just, I'm like, wow, I'm happy about it. You know, I'm really, because it wasn't like I was focused, like I'm the man because I shot this, and no, it was never about that. But looking back, we're like, this is what we get. We all get to celebrate it now. You know, like Eric, scan some more shit. We want to cheer on. We want to, you know, and again, it's about the 90s. It's like, yeah, I was fortunate to capture it and be a part of it and share it. And more so, I'm happy that there's so much more, you know, to share in, you know, as each day goes, you know, and, you know, it's our collective history that we were part of, you know, and I'm happy about it, you know, and especially like, I'm glad like you brought up Malik B, because now like he's singing in the back of my head. So I'm stoked now.
Word. Well, T. Eric Monroe, thank you so much for joining us. The book is Rare and Unseen Moments of 90s Hip Hop. There's multiple volumes. If you got that STEMI check, there's the gold edition out there.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, and on socials, of course, T. Eric. But this conversation's been, enlightening to me, and you've definitely been responsible, like I said at the top, for the way that I remember the folks that have guided my life. So thank you for this time.
I'm honored. Thank you all both. Seriously, thank you, Reg.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been a pleasure, and anytime you want to talk, whatever, I'm here.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much, and congrats on the book, and much success.
Thank you so much. I'll speak with you soon.
All right, take care.
Peace.
Be well.